Newbie Fairy is the first book in a new chapter book series called Oona Bramblegoop's Sideways Magic. Designed for 7 to 10-year-olds, this funny, messy magic book is filled with fairies, snarky slugs, charming illustrations, and a surprising amount of underwear. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and welcome to the Kids Bookshelf. Ahead, we'll explore the book, and I'll talk with the author about the inspiration behind it. I requested and was provided with a copy of the book, but this video is not sponsored. A little bit about the author. According to the book notes, by day, Kate Korsh is a mild-mannered elementary school teacher and insightful marriage and family therapist. But by night, she studied creative writing and is now the author of a series of chapter books featuring the adventures of a fairy who is still learning how to use her magic. She joins us to talk about Oona Bramblegoop's Sideways Magic, Newbie Fairy. Kate, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Kate, this is a brand new chapter book series, so tell us about the inspiration behind it.
It started out as a picture book. I had been working on picture books for several years, and I had an inspiration journal. And I just noticed that my children, I have 2 children, and they just loved books about underwear. Any picture book about underwear, they just found hilarious. And honestly, so did I. Those were some of my favorites too. So I sort of had in the back of my mind that maybe I wanted to write a fun picture book with underwear in it. And then one day I wrote in my journal, The Underwear Fairy. And I just liked the way that sounded, the assonance of it, underwear fairy. And it just seemed to have a lot of potential to me, that there just seemed a lot of opportunities for fun in there. And so I wrote a picture book about the underwear fairy. And then the characters just were demanding more. I was having so much fun writing the dialogue and these fun conversations they were having with each other. And I didn't want to feel hemmed in by 500 words, and so I kind of let myself loose, and it turned into a chapter book. And then it was originally titled The Underwear Fairy, but we wanted there not to be a big spoiler right in the titles for the people that wanted to be surprised as they read in terms of what kind of fairy she became. So then we took her name and put that in the title, and her role as a newbie fairy. So it became Newbie Fairy.
So where did that name come from?
Oona Bramblegoop. My husband is also a writer, and he created the show Suits. And one of the actresses on Suits, her name is Sarah Rafferty. She plays Donna on Suits. And her 2 children are named Oona and Iris. And I just thought those were super cool names. And they had Oona just felt like it had a little bit of magic in it, and so I thought it would be a fun name. And then when I started to write about her family, because she has this sort of sideways magic that doesn't always come out the way she's planned, and I wanted it to be sort of a family trait, like something that happened generation to generation. And so I started thinking of the whole family tree and who was this fairy family. And as I often do, I made a whole brainstorm list of all the last names, all the surnames that would be good fairy surnames. And Bramblegoop was just one of my, ideas that I generated on the list, and it was my favorite. So,
Well, tell us more about her. She is a newbie fairy.
Yes.
And she's learning how to do magic, but as you point out, it goes sideways often.
Yes. She's very enthusiastic. She's sort of over the top, and sometimes she gets ahead of herself. And newbie fairies in my fairy world, they still have to say their magic out loud for it to work. Not like the more advanced fairies that can just flick their wand. So she has to say a spell every time she wants some magic to happen. And her magic will hear certain words in that spell and just misinterpret them. So her magic often ends up being a bit more complicated. Like in the very first chapter, she wants to create fire magically, which is a little bit against the rules for a newbie fairy, but she's sort of a rebel and she decides to try it. And her cousin keeps saying, like, let's just use regular matches, but let's not do this fairy fire. But she says the spell. And instead of just lighting the torches that she has, these fireflies appear and they have flames coming out of their rear ends. And they fly around and light the torches. But with the combination of the torch material that her cousin has collected, they make a terrible, terrible smell. And it gets her in quite a bit of trouble. So yeah, she has to deal with a lot of accidents, but she perseveres. She's a person who perseveres. So
Now, in addition to the underwear in this book, there are also slugs with attitude. Tell us about those.
yeah, yes. It's so funny. My illustrator, Marta Altes, who has done a wonderful job bringing the book to life, she actually sent me a message the other day with a photo of a real slug on her porch. And she said, I'm just never going to look at slugs the same way after we've had such a loving interaction with them as characters in this book. So yeah, there are slugs. Oona starts out as the slug fairy, which is not very glamorous. She's not happy about it. She wants to move up in the world. But the slugs are actually very important for the fairy world because their slime combined with fairy magic is what keeps the fairy world invisible to the humans. So, and they're pretty sassy, the slugs. They have a lot of opinions that they throw in outside of the regular text.
So this is a chapter book. So for what age range is the book intended?
It's for 7 to 10-year-olds. I would say anybody in elementary school is going to enjoy this book. And I tried to write something that I thought kids and adults would think is humorous. So for the older grades in elementary school, they can read it independently. And for the younger grades, they maybe can read it with a parent. But it's a pretty quick read. I think in 2 or 3 bedtimes, you could get through it if you were reading it together.
So would you read a portion of the book for us to give people a flavor of what you're writing and what they're going to find here?
All right, so this is the very beginning. Chapter 1. In Blackberry Bog, the breeze hummed with excitement, and the moonlight sparkled like glitter. It was the most important night of the year, the annual Fairy Awards. All the fairies were sitting inside the Grand Fairy Theater. Well, almost all. Oona Bramblegoop, Slug Fairy, hadn't been invited. Again. But she wasn't going to pout. Instead, she decided this would also be the night of the very first Slug Awards. She flapped her tiny wings double time as she flitted around the creek bed, taking care of last-minute touches. And here is a beautiful spread of her Slug Awards.
So in addition to the text, the narrative of the story, you also have at the bottom of the pages, sprinkled throughout the book, some fun fairy facts. Tell us about those.
Yeah, I always liked it as a child when a book would have a little extra something, a little bonus that was in the margins. And especially for newer readers, I feel like it's a nice break to pull out of the narrative and read a little self-contained note or paragraph. It's almost like a palate cleanser. So, I enjoyed making these a lot. They're fun. Here's one. The Fairy Week has 8 days. There's Monday, Tuesday, Frimp Day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Snorgle Day. It might seem strange to humans, but to fairies, nothing is stranger than Wednesday. The spelling is so weird.
Another one of my favorites in your Fun Fairy Facts was how old fairies are. And there was a formula for figuring that out, which I couldn't figure it out. But I guess that's part of the point.
Yes. It's sort of like it's impossible for humans to comprehend exactly how fairies are, how old fairies are. And so the equation is like you have to divide by how many chocolate chips you can fit into your mouth. And it's just fun and silly. The general idea is that fairies are much older than humans.
So this is the first book in this series, and we've touched a little bit about her character, but how would you describe the plot of this first book?
So she wants to move up in the world. Like I mentioned, she wants to be more than just the slug fairy. And her idol, the most important fairy in all of fairydom, is the tooth fairy. Her name is Lucy. And Oona happens to meet Lucy, and she wants to become Lucy's assistant, Lucy's helper, Lucy's friend, Lucy's confidant, Lucy's everything. And so she starts following Lucy around, and Lucy's a loner a little bit. She wants to be left alone. And so at first she's not super welcoming to Oona. But then it becomes clear that Lucy does actually need help with one of her tooth clients, one of the children that she collects teeth from. He keeps having accidents where he's falling down and hurting himself all the time. And that's the one thing that Oona does really well. Her protection spell, her protection magic. And her protection magic takes the form of magical underwear that when you put it on, if you're about to fall or hurt yourself, it has auto wedgie power, and it pulls you up short and pulls you back to attention, and then you don't hurt yourself. So she and Oona and Lucy start to work together to help this child with her magical underwear, and they encounter some problems that could get them in trouble with all the other fairies. But because they have become strong friends, they defend each other, and together everything turns out okay for them. Happy ending.
So we've got the story about Oona, which is fun, and there's lots of, as I've read, it's described as messy magic.
Yes.
Along the way. What do you hope kids are going to take away from this story, besides just a fun read?
Well, I hope one of the things is sort of the theme of perseverance, and that it's okay to make mistakes, and that making mistakes is part of how you get to success and how you get to your goals. The best way to learn is to move through failure. And, in writing this book, I was certainly feeling that on a personal level because I've been striving to write books for a dozen years. So it's certainly a lesson that I have learned, and it's really powerful. And I hope that kids discover that too, that it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. Nobody is perfect, and it's actually not even preferable to be perfect. It's better to make those mistakes so you learn.
Well, that leads perfectly in what was going to be my next question, and that's your personal journey to become a writer. So tell us a little bit about that and what you've learned along the way.
Yeah. I always enjoyed writing. I always kept a journal when I was a child. And when I was in college, I took some creative writing courses. And gosh, they were so fun. I just thought it almost felt like cheating to be taking courses and getting college credit and just having a blast writing. But when I got into the adult work world, it just seemed impossible. It seemed like only extra special, superhuman people could actually be professional writers. And so I just wrote for myself for a long time. And then when I met my husband, like I mentioned, he is a professional writer. And, I got to know him, and he didn't have, wings or anything superhuman about him. He was a regular guy. And I thought, hey, if he can do this, I can do this too. And so then I started going to, I took more courses, and I joined the children's SCBWI, and I went to conferences, and I just kept writing and writing and writing and reading and reading. And at one of the conferences, I met my agent, and she read the picture book manuscript of The Underwear Fairy, and she said, let's work together. So it was really exciting.
Well, congratulations on this first book being out here. And I know this is just the first in a series of chapter books. So what can you tell us about the next one?
So the next one, the boy that they help in the first book together, in the course of the first book, he actually manages to catch a glimpse of them, and he's fascinated. So in the second book, he captures Oona. And even though Lucy helps her escape, he manages to follow them up to the fairy world. And before they know it, they have this giant boy in the fairy world. And they have to pull this big cover up because they don't want the other fairies to find out. They certainly don't want the fairy council to find out because they would be in huge trouble. And so they're trying to hide the boy while they're trying to find a way to get him back home safely and have the fairy world not be exposed to the rest of the humans. So high stakes, very high stakes.
The book is Oona Bramblegoop's Sideways Magic, Newbie Fairy by Kate Korsh. Kate, thank you for talking with me today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
If you'd like to purchase this book, I've placed a link for you in the description below. Well, thank you for watching this edition of the Kids Bookshelf. And if you'd like to see more videos about children's books and their authors, be sure to like, subscribe, and click on the bell to be notified about future programs. And if you're interested in books for young adult and older readers, be sure to check out my Some Books Considered channel. I'm Dan Skinner. Until next time, keep sharing the gift of reading.